Well, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris officially conceded defeat to her Republican rival Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election, but vowed not to concede the fight that fueled her campaign.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting.
Her supporters at Howard cheered for her as she argued them to accept the result of the election. She also told them that she had dialed declared winner Trump to congratulate him.
Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
But Harris warned of a dark time, but ended her speech calling for optimism and faith.
I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America.
Trump won the U.S. presidential election for a second term, handing Harris a defeat in one of the most remarkable comebacks in American electoral history. The Republican won more than half of the U.S. states, including key battlegrounds Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and all of which voted Democratic in the last election. Now, that gave him 295 electoral votes as against Harris's 226 so far. The final calls are yet to be made in Arizona and Nevada. Now, correspondent Siddhan Sibal sent us this report from Washington, D.C. Take a look.
It's clear now that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. All throughout the day, we saw developments, including Kamala Harris speaking to Donald Trump. The focus is on the peaceful transfer of power. And we also saw the rally or the public address by Kamala Harris at the Howard University, something that she had to do earlier, but she did not reach out, and that left a lot of fans of Kamala Harris very disappointed. Now, essentially, the focus has been through the election campaigning on issues like immigration, on taxation, cost of living, inflation, and of course foreign policy front, the Gaza and the Ukraine war. We obviously will be focusing on what Donald Trump brings to the table as the president, because now is the time that, political rhetoric aside, focus will be on the promises he made. Essentially, we know that when it comes to his key focus area, that's immigration, he's expected to take sharp decisions. And also, when it comes to the Ukraine war, he has promised that he will end the war within 24 hours. This is something that will be closely watched both in Kyiv and Moscow. Siddhan Sibal for WION in Washington, United States.
All right, to discuss more, we're now being joined by Adele Nazarian from Washington, D.C. Adele is a senior media fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Right, now let me just observe this. You had mentioned earlier that you don't see any scenario where Donald Trump doesn't win this election fair and square. This feels, and you added that this feels like a repeat of 2016, but on a far grander scale. And well, of course, we see it seems to be right. What are your reactions?
Thank you so much. Anyone who was on the ground, anyone who was following outlets that were non-mainstream, like the Breitbart News is, following X, the real true will of the people saw that Trump had the momentum. And I have to say, this election did not have a majority of mail-in ballots. I frankly saw the momentum on the ground. I saw the support he had from males. It overcame, honestly, the number of suburban women who decided to vote for Kamala just based on her gender. And that's the result that we saw. One more thing I have to say is, based on the election results that I saw, that we were able to witness, historically today, I have no doubt in my mind now for sure, that in 2020, there was some tampering that went on with the ballots. Not a conspiracy theory, it's just a reality. There's no way those numbers make sense. And I certainly hope it's investigated to prevent by Trump's administration to ensure that that scenario that happened in 2020 is never repeated again.
Right. Now, let me also ask you this. It's all red now. The White House, old reps, Senate, governorships. What is next for Democrats?
So, that was a nice concession speech given by Kamala Harris. Who knows if she had spoken like that more throughout her campaign, if she would have done better. That said, I think that Democrats are going to continue to fight. I think they had no choice but to really concede. They walked, a line that unfortunately they put themselves in this position. I think that if they continue to fight the way that they did in 2020, when they clearly had no business behaving the way that they did, when Trump clearly, was still the favorite among most American voters, they'd be in a better position. I think that now they're going to continue probably to throw these vitriol rhetoric towards Trump. I think it was very important and profound that Kamala Harris did say it's important to see a peaceful transition of power to Trump. It's important that everyone can fight for what they want, but not to do it in a violent manner, which is wonderful. I think we've seen a lot of the left has unfortunately been violent and erratic. But I hope that what we don't see is a scenario where, you have the anarchist, let's say Antifa elements kind of pulling these violent acts. I hope we don't see more assassination attempts by these characters and by the left on Donald Trump. Unfortunately, there have been 3 so far. But that's the kind of stuff that I hope, and I think Americans hope, there will not be a continuation of.
Right. Let me also ask you this. Now, sources say that Special Counsel Jack Smith is in active talks with senior leadership at the Justice Department, evaluating ways he can end his prosecutions of President-elect Donald Trump. What happens to Trump's future legal cases now?
I think that's an excellent question. The experiences that Trump had over the last 3 months of this very, very hard-fought election were, I think, profound. I think they really, really changed him, and they've humbled him in a lot of ways. That said, I don't think he's going to seek this, vindictive streak to go against the people who tried to destroy him, although I think there are a select few who do deserve to have justice brought upon them, and Jack Smith happens to be one of them. I think that he definitely will be leaving the post. I think all the cases that were misleadingly brought upon Donald Trump will absolutely be removed, and I think this is going to be a huge, huge case for the history books, where justice is prevailed, and that I think it's going to set an example for all future incidents where just because someone isn't liked very much, that they don't just bring up trumped up, no pun intended, charges against them in order to try to destroy them. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I do think it's important. I will put South there also. I do think it's important that Trump doesn't just let go what happened to him. I think Jack Smith has to be made an example of, and I think that there are a few others who also should be dealt with similarly, in order to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
Right. Interesting. Now, let me just stay with us. I'll just come to our VOA White House Bureau Chief, Patty with Escuada. Patsy, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we heard Kamala Harris make her speech in front of her supporters. Harris warned of dark times, but she ended her speech calling for optimism and faith. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the speech was necessary to rally her supporters and comfort them. I mean, clearly they are hurting right now. I was with them last night during the election watch party at Howard University, and I was also again there this afternoon. So the message that Harris brought to them is not, I mean, like what you said, that even if dark times are coming, we need to be the bright stars that light the sky. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but what she's trying to do is to bring optimism, to encourage her supporters not to give up hope. And also, the most important thing is that she underscored very clearly that she accepted this result. This is part of democracy. I think she did take a little bit of a jab towards Trump, saying that this is the fundamental of democracy is you accept an election result even if you lose. This is what makes us different than a tyranny or a monarchy. So that clearly is a jab to Donald Trump, who has never committed that he would accept an election defeat or the election results. So that was a message of hope and a message of comfort that Kamala Harris tried to bring to her supporters, who were very emotional. I mean, I saw a lot of people crying, a lot of people hugging each other, but many of the people that I spoke with say that they will continue the fight.
Right. Also, since you were there, what kind of observation did you find in the Democrats there?
I think right now Democrats are doing a lot of reflection and thinking back about, what kind of mistakes that they did in terms of strategy. I think they put in a lot of expectations or a lot of hope that they were going to be able to motivate women with the issue of reproductive rights and abortion. But as we now see the numbers, it turns out that enthusiasm among women is not as high as expected by the Democrats. I think people will also look at, other than the difference in terms of like the gender of the voters, clearly, even though Harris had many more women supporters than Trump, perhaps they were offset by the kind of coalition that Trump was able to expand, particularly in terms of male minorities, black males, and also Latino males, as well as keeping the white working class. So these are all numbers to be crunched and strategies to be looked at as Democrats think ahead about what their strategy next to be, because as you mentioned earlier, it's not just the White House, but also the Senate and the governorship that's turning red.
Right. Let me come back to Adele. Your reactions on how do you think will Trump 2.0 look like, and would it be any different from 2020?
I think it's going to be even better than 2020. I think that if he had the second consecutive term to continue what he had started in 2020, he would have been able to prevent these ghastly wars that have placed America in a horrible debt situation and really affected everyday Americans, their bottom line, frankly. And I think that it's going to be a big challenge. He's unfortunately inherited a very, very big mess from the Democrats. And Democrats historically are neocons. They are the ones that start the wars abroad, but there's misinformation out there in the media, with the exception of George Bush, that start wars. Frankly, it's the Democrats. Look what they did in Iran. Look what they've done in the Middle East, and other parts of the world. So I have to say, I think he's going to first and foremost target the immigration crisis at home. He's going to end that war, obviously, the wars abroad, and he's going to really address the immigration crisis at home. He will probably even focus on doing something about America's infrastructure. We saw Biden and the Democrats did zero about that. What happens is you're going to see a lot of rhetoric oftentimes coming out of the Democratic Party to build back better, to make things improve, the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. Usually those words are just virtue signaling and they never end up having any kind of tangible results. But with Trump, you will see an actual result. And I think that he knows he has nothing to lose. This is his last chance to finish what he started. And that said, he can't run again. Obviously, there's no rule that allows him to run again. But because of that, he's going to give it his all. And I think what's going to happen is there won't be a dark time. The only dark time will be the unfortunate hiccup economically that is going to be experienced by everyday Americans over what has occurred in the previous administration. But I think after that, there's going to be a real golden era for the American people, and by extension of that, for the European, for the Middle Eastern, for Asia, for people all over the world. And there will be, America will be able to experience, the people will be able to experience a level of comfort that maybe they haven't seen in a very long time. And
Right.
so I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do.
All right. Well, you have been correct about the election results, so perhaps you can also see the same result in his 2.0. Well, thank you so much, Adele, for joining us on the show. And Patsy, thank you so much for joining us and giving your reactions as well.